the show. I'm Leslie Choice. Our guest today is Wendy Lill. She's a playwright. She's a three-time nominee for a Governor General's Award, winner of a Gemini Award, and also currently Member of Parliament. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Leslie.
Now, I think of Parliament as a place that's made up of men and women, usually trained as lawyers or maybe civil servants or something like that. What does a playwright bring to Parliament that's different from everybody else who's there?
Well, I don't know. I think that first of all, you're wrong that these people are all lawyers and what else did you say?
Well, civil servants, bureaucrats.
Well,
that
I must say that there's within the caucus that I'm in, within the New Democrats, there are a surprising number of people who are really quite different from that mold, and I think that's kind of neat. Like one woman was taking tickets at a federal park. Another was working as a healthcare worker. You know, I think those are two neat examples of people who are right out there with, you know, just in the world.
So the stereotype can be wrong.
Well, the stereotype can be wrong, but I think that in terms of what I can bring, I've certainly asked that 1,000 times. I still ask it, and I think that I like to think that what I bring is that I'm in the business of communication, always have been, and so if that's not a place to use those skills, what is? I think that you know, that I went there. I decided that I had to sort of use what I cared about. I needed to sort of put it into another venue. You know, I just thought, okay, I've been writing plays and I've been writing for a long time, and now I want to try to move this somewhere else. And so this is another forum, another place to communicate.
What about the creativity part of it? Does creativity and government mix in any particular way? Is it possible to be creative in government?
Well, I think that it's not easy, and I think that what I find in Ottawa, and I don't think it's just the people I'm hanging around with. I think everybody is swamped with material, and I think there's just such an overload. You know, you just are, in fact, just treading water, and I'm worried about the fact that very few people seem to have a total picture. And how can you have a total picture when you have massive amounts of conflicting interests wanting to, you know, talk to you and have you represent them? So it is very, very different from writing, because in writing you focus and focus and focus down to one thing until you, in fact, have found that you have something to say. You know, and then you say it. Whereas in this business, the skill is in trying to, you know, have 1,000 balls in the air and somehow be able to keep, you know, the right one up at the right time. And that's a very strange way to live.
That's a really interesting one, though, because I think we all feel overloaded in so many ways. You know, like I say, I'm too busy. I talk to somebody else, they're too busy. Now, you're at some level here where the complexity of the information that you're dealing with and, you know, getting bombarded with is so absolutely intense that, you know, you've got to cope in some particular way and still make sense of all that. Now, what do you do? Do you hire other people or find good people who can process that information for you? Are you still at a point where you're trying to feed it all through your mind and make sense of it? What do you do?
Well, I think that I am still trying to do that, and I don't, you know, I'm beginning to think I'll, you know, just give it up. You know, I mean, I do have I have somebody that works for me that is supposed to sort of filter out material that is, you know, that is really to the point for the areas that we're focusing on. I'm the critic for persons with disabilities and for heritage and communications. So within each one of those areas, there are certain goals that we've set. You know, things that we think we can reasonably accomplish in you know, next couple of years, or hope to sort of move ahead with. So those are the areas that I start to try to focus in on. I try to, but then within those areas, there's thousands and thousands of pages that come in at you. And I was watching Neil Postman on CBC the other night, and, you know, he just talks about the fact that there is just, you know, it's just information overload, and we are all suffering from that. How do you actually cut to the chase and get to what is important? And I mean, is the human brain able to do that? You know, I think that it's sort of time to take back time to basically say, slow down. You know, I'm not going to be able to respond to emails and faxes as fast as they come in, because literally my mind doesn't work as a machine like that. It's really, I think the task we all have is to sort of get back in control of the technology.
Yeah. Don't want to just feed it all through your computer and let your computer come up with a decision for you? No?
Well, that's about what's happening.
What's right up there at the top of your list as an MP of things that you would like to make a change?
Well, in terms of where I live, I mean, I'm the reason I decided to run was because I was feeling very angry about changes that were occurring in my life and the lives of my family. You know, you start at home, and I didn't like what I was seeing in terms of persons with disabilities. I didn't like what I was seeing in terms of cuts to services, the services that we've all sort of agreed with as a people that we want. We want decent health care, and we want pension security for seniors. I mean, these are things that we've opted into. That sort of define us. I think we all agreed we wanted a public broadcasting system that was sufficiently funded that we would be able to see ourselves reflected, and also all sorts of arts institutions like the Canada Council and the National Film Board and Telefilm and the National Archives and Library. All these places are very important to me, as a writer, and so. Yes. So I think those are the things that I got involved. I decided to run for office because I wanted to speak out on those issues, and as a sort of a community worker type person, not as and I guess that the whole idea of seeing myself as a politician, it's still quite foreign to me. I see myself as a community activist. Yes. And yet, the thing that's interesting is that people see me as a politician. A lot of people see me as a politician. Yeah. And so when you find yourself looking at someone who is in fact looking at you in a different way, it's kind of it's an interesting thing.
Has it changed you? That perception of others?
Well, it might bring out a play someday. It's it makes me think about power and how people perceive power and station. I mean, and person's status. As an MP, I have a certain status. I'm an opposition MP. I mean, I'm not. In the place where I live, we have where we live, we have a tradition of politics, of pavement politics. We're talking about people pulling in the gravel trucks, and as soon as an election's called, this isn't the kind of politics that I'm interested in. I mean. Or that I can be involved in, even if I want it to be. As an opposition MP, I'm there to speak out on issues that I think people are concerned about, and that's a lot broader base than sort of getting somebody's, sort of greasing certain wheels and not others.
Do you ever? I know you're really interested in language because you're a writer. Do you ever hear yourself sounding like a politician?
There are several
and say,
words.
Oh my God.
Well, there's some words now that I think to myself, what words used to be used? For example, the expression, and I'm quite interested in this, heads up. People always say, I need to get a heads up on this. Well, what did they used to say before heads up? And I almost forget. Well, they used to say, I need to become aware of. I need to be alerted to. There are verbs that you can use to express that. I need to know more about. But instead, people say, get a heads up. Uppercase something. I hate words like that, and yet I do find that I do give in to a couple of them, but I'm aware of it every single time. I'm aware of it.
Yeah, something that just came up recently. I keep hearing the word leveraging.
Oh, leveraging.
Is that another one?
Well, and people talk about grow the economy. I think you grow beans.
Right.
I came home this summer and I want to spend time with books. I want to again sort of get a sense of language again, because I do think that if you don't use language, you lose it,
Right.
And so you become captured by your language, and you become captured by the bureaucraty's language and the sort of the managerial class language, and I'm quite concerned about that.
That's interesting. Now, obviously, the social political concerns that you mentioned, this is nothing new for you. You've been dealing with them in your plays right along. I think, like an issue like health care, that sounds like something that'd be a really tough one to do an interesting theatrical piece about. But you've done this, right?
Well, you don't do a play about an issue. I mean, I don't think you can. I certainly have tried.
Yeah.
But what you have to do is you have to find a story within a whole environment that you want to look at. You know, you want to put people in an environment that they can understand and think about. But first of all, you have to give them a story which is complex enough that they're not going to be able to come up with an answer very quickly. They have to, in fact, go the journey with you and try to. You see, I don't think there's any point in writing anything if you can't shed some light or make something a bit clearer than was before, because, again, we are overloaded with information, but we're absolutely desperately in need of clarity. And I feel that way everywhere I am. I certainly feel that where I am now in terms of being in Ottawa. And trying to find clarity in my own head about issues, but then trying to find clarity for, you know, in the forums that I now have to speak out, you know. That's fun for me, actually. In terms of being able to write now, I like to be able to try to clarify things for whoever I'm speaking with, you know.
That's an interesting concept given the fact you're talking about the overload of information.
That's right.
Yeah, we all start to feel more and more helpless as we're overloaded with this information. And so it's almost like the artist and you coming back out saying, you know, the artist's job, or maybe in your case the politician's job, is to make sense of that information.
To find out, to always ask, what really is going on here? What is going on here? And that is the task, to figure out what's going on and to recapture, control of the technology, I think, is definitely a major theme.
Yeah. One of your, I guess your most recent play, Corker,
yes,
concerns a deputy minister, a mentally challenged man. Can you give us just what's the basic thrust of the story? How does that work? See, that sounds to me like, this is an issue-oriented play.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, it came out of a couple of things. I was very concerned about the fact that I was seeing women, so many women that I knew, such as and even myself, just completely overloaded. And I was seeing women walking along with cell phones at their ears and just, you know, moving way too fast, worrying way too much, and trying to juggle, you know, home, children, jobs, you know, not anymore having any space, no breathing space, no 10 minutes to actually reflect or just to be calm. And I thought that's alarming, because we used to at least had women who were in fact in the nurturing role, or they had the time to think about their communities, to make sure that the community center had enough, you know, I don't know, paper towels in the washing, I don't know, whatever. We used to have people that could shovel rinks, you know, but as we all now work faster and faster and have to work more and more, you know, there isn't the time to care for what needs to be cared for. So I looked at that, and I also wanted to look at the fact that, you know, people with disabilities are being, you know, shrunk, you know, they're becoming more and more, although ironically there appears to be more concern for them when you look at, say, changes of bylaws, and we're now trying to make sure that there are ramps everywhere. But in fact, the amount of money and the amount of, you know, actual infrastructure there for people with disabilities is being shrunk further and further. So I wanted to look at all of that. So what I did was I put a very, you know, high-ranking female civil servant who was sort of leading the cost-cutting brigade in a it could be a provincial budget, it could be in Nova Scotia, it could be Ontario, it could be any government that we know now in this country. And into her life comes a mentally challenged man who in fact has to be taken care of. There's no question about it. This person is sort of left to her by her sister who commits suicide. And as I say that, I have to first of all say that this is a comedy. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not.
You want to entertain along the way?
Well, it is. It's even, you know, I sort of lay out these sort of scenarios, and people think, my God, that sounds like a pretty hard, rough ride to sit through. But it is funny, and if it's not funny, then it's, you know, it's not worth seeing, I don't think. In this instance, it's got to be funny, and you have to be able to see the humor in these people's lives. What happens, in fact, in the play, and what I want to get to in the play, I guess, and I am manipulating a certain way. I'm trying to show that, in fact, this woman begins to realize that what has to happen is that she does have to take care of Corker. We have to take care of the people who are more vulnerable. But it's not just simply an act of charity. We do it because we need to do it for ourselves as well. And that's what I believe. And I think she is a better person at the end from the journey she goes through with this person. And you know, she has in her life she has a brother who is he's sort of a failed entrepreneur. I mean, he can't jump on the track that we're all supposed to be jumping on. He hasn't been able to do it. He's taken all the training courses, the attitude courses, he's learned computers, but he still can't seem to make a go of being an entrepreneur. So the sort of this brand new world order is not for everyone, but the world has to be for everyone.
Okay, that's Wendy's recent play called Corker. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back in a minute. Hi, and we're back. My guest is Wendy Lill, Member of Parliament and playwright. Now, you've said that Parliament is not like theater. When I watch the news, I see actors playing a part, the rhetoric, the standing up and pontificating and all this sort of thing that goes on. What do you mean when you say it's not like theater? Well,
I don't think it's good theater in that I do not see the amount of change that I think has to occur in good theater. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned at how partisan a place that is. It continues to floor me how little change of attitude ever occurs in there. People start with a script, they start with an attitude, and they continue with it. And they don't listen. I don't see the listening going on there that I want. And I have to admit that we all get into it and it may go back to that whole issue of you have so much coming in it, you have to take a position and you have to just go with it. So it's not a forum for ideas being exchanged, and it should be.
What about those TV cameras in there? That changes things, doesn't it? Now that people are performing for the camera?
I think it does. I think that, in fact, that's who you're talking to. And in effect, it's often who you're talking to, because you may, in fact, be talking to 12 people in that house. And when I get up, say, to speak about, I had a private member's motion to speak about removing the GST from books. Yes. There were 12 people in the House of Commons. There's 301 members, and there were 12 people there. And I was shocked by that, because it's so important. The whole issue of literacy and trying to encourage literacy at all costs, and what you don't do is throw a harmful tax on books. It just makes it even harder for people to get books. And I thought, this is an important issue. We have to have everybody here. We have to be filling people's minds on this and letting people really understand the importance of it. However, that wasn't what happened there. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that all 301 members at some point must feel the same frustration. Why is it that we're not able to have more of a real exchange of ideas?
And on TV, that must look a little bit absurd to be watching
you don't see
empty.
It. You see,
no, you just see the speaker.
You don't see it, and I think I think there's been a decision made there that the cameras aren't allowed to show how empty the house is, and I think that's rather deceptive.
Interesting.
Because, and now, to be fair to the whole process, there is so much more to do there than sit in the house. Yes. And so what you have is you have house duty. I mean, you have a certain amount of time that you have to be there. And then the rest of the time you're meeting with other people, or you're making speeches, or you're doing something. You're in a committee, committee. I sit on the Heritage Committee, so I'm in committee maybe 12 hours a week, and then there's all sorts of preparation for that.
Since you are involved in the cultural side of government there, being a critic of the cultural side of government, how are we doing in Canada in terms of books and television and film and these sorts of things? Are we still getting swamped by American media, American culture, or are we holding the line?
No, we're not holding the line. We are being swamped, and there's some critical points that we have to look at right now, and certainly the MAI, which is the Multilateral Agreement on Trade, has been stopped for a time. But it was almost like we had it was a fire drill, but the fire is still out there. We have to somehow make a decision about, where we are going to stand in terms of I guess, protecting our culture. We have to, I think, my estimation is that we have to work very hard to protect Canadian voices and make sure that what you're having coming out of your radios and televisions continues to be your local voices. It continues to reflect the reality of your communities.
Now, why do we need that? It's a big world. We have freedom of speech. We should be able to listen to whoever we want to. We should be able to read whatever books we want to, see whatever movies we want to.
Because, Leslie, you live in a community. You live surrounded by a certain environment. And you need to have that reflected back to you. I believe you do. You don't need to have, I certainly don't believe my children need to have, you know, well, I use home improvements as an example. I mean, my children may in fact look somewhat like those kids on that American sitcom, but they may not look at all like them. They may have completely different colored skins. They may have a completely different social economic circumstance. They don't have to be, you know, flooded with TV realities which have nothing to do with their own. They need to be able to understand the world through their own eyes and through the eyes of people who are thoughtful and caring about what they're experiencing.
Worth standing up for, worth fighting for?
Oh, I fight for it all the time. That's what I definitely fight for. I fight for stable funding for the CBC. You know, I'm floored that more money is being drained out of CBC radio and that local programming is disappearing all the time from our local TV and radio stations. There's huge mergers happening in terms of broadcasting, and that's a real concern. You know, we have to look at those areas very carefully. I'm concerned about the fact that there are millions of books and archival materials which are sitting in warehouses in places like Hull because we're not putting enough money into our national libraries, our national archives. These are things Canadians don't know about. You know, I think people would be just floored if they knew that this is where the budget or the deficit is disappearing. You know, it's disappearing at a huge loss to our heritage.
Well, now you're out there trying to protect this other literature and in some ways protect other writers and their rights to publish and be published in radio and be heard. What about your own writing? I'm sure something's being sacrificed along the way here. What are you writing now?
Well, I'm not writing a play. You don't write a play on the side. And I'm not even trying to do that. I had to sort of do changes to Corker over Christmas so that it could be produced in the winter, and it just about killed my family. I mean, I'd finally come home, I was there, and I went up to my office to write, and it's just not on. I mean, I'm basically taking a break from playwriting. But I'm not taking a break from writing. I mean, I'm still trying to communicate through, I'm talking with you, you know. I want to be able to continue to think in a way that I think people will hopefully relate to. I want to sort of strip away the political jargon. You know, I'm not going to use words like heads up and grow the economy with you.
You have a little list you keep track of. Don't use those words.
Don't use those words. So like be real, and you know, and just the task is to be real. And anytime I do write, be real in the writing that I'm doing.
Our guest today is Wendy Lill. We're going to take a short break and be back in a minute. Hi, and we're back. My guest is Wendy Lill. Your quote is saying there's a growing divide between the elite and the street.
Well, that's, you know, goes back to the play Corker that I wrote, and that's probably goes back to why I'm doing this. You know, I don't believe in that. I don't believe that we can allow that to continue to grow.
Well, Wendy, thanks a lot for coming into the studio and sharing these things with us.
My pleasure.
And I really appreciate that you're watching our show. Come back and see us again. Bye.